Hello, this is Peggy, and
Heather,
we are Life Unfiltered.
uncovered.
So, we were just talking essentially about parenting. So, if you're just tuning in for the first time, I am a mother of four kids. Four. And I have most of my friends, most of them have kids, about the same age, some of them a little younger, but pretty close to the same age as my kids. So my oldest is 31 and my youngest just turned 22. And now I have grandbabies as well. So I'm going to talk a little bit about parenting in general. So if you watched our previous podcast, we were talking about gun control and all of this stuff and mental health. Children, some of this has got to do with parenting, and parenting is not, I mean, the government stepping in and trying to take over and, oh, well, this is what we believe. And so, we're mandating this because, and I don't know whether that's because people are just not parenting or they want to take the parenting rights away. And maybe there's a little bit of both going on. I'm not sure.
Like when you have protective services coming in because your kid is not being fed or because they're abused, that's when I think that, going off of our last podcast, when I feel that government whatever needs to come in.
Yeah.
But then, like, once you take that kid and you put them in foster care, you need to make sure they're being treated right and all of that. But book banning,
Yeah.
that's ridiculous. That should be up to the parents if they want their kid to read To Kill a Mockingbird,
Yep.
which I read in school. But anyways, going back to what you're saying, is there is a time and a place for government to step in. And again, if like parents want their kids to be read a book by a drag queen, that is a parent's decision, not the government. But anyways, going back to what you were going to go into,
Well,
parenting, again, everybody knows that I'm single. I have no kids, but
but
definitely.
you have parents and you know people who have kids and you see the results of good parenting or bad parenting
Yes.
out in the world. I mean, it's pretty obvious when people have no self-control or no respect, and they're just flat out rude, or they feel entitled and they think the world owes them something. That goes back to parenting. So
100%.
whether it was they weren't disciplined, or whether it was they weren't ever told no. I mean, that's because the parents didn't want to do the parenting. They didn't want to make any of those hard choices about what's acceptable discipline. I just won't put myself in a position with my child that they ever need discipline, which is wrong. 100%. You know, I'm not, so I'm not saying anybody should beat their child. I think that that is completely wrong. But I do,
I
pardon?
mean, you didn't say anything about. Are you going into like what?
But I do believe that there is an age bracket. So, and I'll say under 5, spanking is acceptable in certain circumstances. It's a last resort, first. Second of all, it is only in situations where the result of not listening and not, I mean, it is more damaging to them than a swat on the butt. Okay. So hand, not, no, you're not using utensils or belts or anything.
My parents sit on my butt. I had a wooden spoon and a belt on my butt so many times.
Yeah. And I had the same, but I'm of the mind where, you know what, if you can't say it, if your hand can't say it, if it's not enough, then there's something else wrong with your parenting style. That, you know, you should be able to slap, a child with the palm of your hand, and they should get the idea. And it doesn't even need to hurt them. The idea that you have just slapped their butt, it actually hurts their feelings. Okay. You don't actually have to cause any pain or damage. But the only time that you would do it, in my opinion, if that child runs out onto the road into traffic, or like, because I had my one daughter, she was a runner, took her outside. I mean, you'd hold hands, but she was, I mean, I've got 4 kids. I mean, sometimes I had to use my hands for other things. I'd let go for a second, or she'd just squirm herself out of there. She was a runner and she would always run for the road. And you would say, please, like, come back here. You'd chase her, you'd bring her back. We don't run on the road. It's very dangerous. Cars can hurt you. So you'd try and correct with your words, showing her, I mean, we did a little leash thing, where, she was
I know what
attached
you're talking about. I
to
know
my
exactly.
wrist. And so she could only go so far. But she learned how to take that off because she was brilliant. Um, and then you don't even realize, oh my gosh, she's no longer attached. You're like, "Ugh." So if it's dangerous, if because getting hit by a car, pretty dangerous.
Yep.
I'll tell you, it only took once or twice a pat on the butt. Guess what? No longer did she run towards the road. Doesn't mean she didn't run towards the park, the climbers, the swing, the backyard, her friends. I mean, she would still run, but not where vehicles were. Okay. I was okay with her, just didn't want her on the road. Okay. Um, electrical outlets. If they're going to try and get a fork or something metal or whatever, or even their own darn fingers, or if they're putting their mouth near an electrical outlet, that is dangerous. And they do things like that if you're not watching all the time. First of all, put outlet covers on, but they do get smart. They can pull them out, some of them. If that happens, I mean, a whack on the butt stops it. I mean, electrical covers are better than they used to be, and they stay in better now. Um, but anyway,
I mean, I would get spankings when I would sass off.
no.
If mostly when I sass off.
Mm-hmm.
Me putting my finger in a socket, whatever. I don't think I got spanked. I don't really remember, but it's mostly when I sassed off, didn't follow what my parents told me to do.
Yeah.
But I don't know, like
Well, I
when.
see, and I think that there are better options for sassing off than spanking. I'm like spanking in my world was, and I mean, I was spanked for lots of things, way beyond, for much longer, many years. I don't agree with that.
Yeah,
I I believe that there are better ways to provide discipline for a child that can reason. I mean, you're going to have a conversation. I mean, the things that motivate them. If you are parenting, and this is where parenting comes in, you need to know your kid and not just, hey, how are you? Dinner's on the stove and they go off in their own thing. I mean, as a family, we had family dinners. We sat down at a table every day and had dinner. I mean, together. I would hear about their day. I would know who the bullies were. I would know what they were doing in school. We did projects, like the projects, school projects together. We 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 crafted together. I mean, we went for walks together. We were a family. And so I knew my kids. So when they were doing something that was maybe unacceptable, or I mean, I knew what I had to use in their life that was important to them, that I could say, you know what? I'm taking that toy and you can have it back when you decide that you're going to behave in this way that you should behave. Do you know what I mean? Like, there's other ways to alter their behavior if you know your child.
yeah.
But I don't think we're taking enough time to know our children. I think that that's one of the reasons there's so much more anxiety and mental health issues in children. I mean, because they're lonely and they have no guidance and they have no solid relationship with a parent. And that's why you see kids getting guns, taking them to school, and shooting people because they're screaming for attention and there's none. And bad attention's still attention. You want good kids, be friends with your kids, or maybe not friends, but at least know them. Be their parent. Um, discipline them. It's hard. Consistency is really hard, especially when you have to say no repeatedly. And I know a lot of single parents out there, that's one of their biggest struggles because they're always the mean parent. By the way, I've been married the whole time, right? So and my husband's not good at being the mean parent. So I was. It's taxing. Now, we had some basic rules. If I discipline or if I've grounded them or anything, you have to stick to it. It's not just about me sticking to it or enforcing the rules. I'll be the bad guy, but we're a united front when it comes to things. If he doesn't agree or didn't agree on something, we didn't discuss that in front of the kids. He would come and talk to me and, well, maybe, grounding for a whole month is too long. Like, does the punishment fit the crime?
Yep.
And I'd be like, well, what do you think? And then he would say, oh, well, maybe 2 weeks and no phone for that 2 weeks, and for 2 weeks longer or whatever. I'm like, all right. And then I'd let him be the good parent and say, you know what, mom and I had a talk, and maybe the punishment doesn't fit the crime. This is what we're gonna do. It's fine.
Yep.
You can even be the superhero. I didn't care. I think that as a single parent, because I've had friends that are single parents, I think that's a bigger struggle. So, and they don't want to put that time or effort in, like they don't want to consistently have to say, no, not allowed, not okay. It's very hard. And I admire any single parent that can be consistent, even if it's 90% of the time, instead of the 100% that you get often with a two-parent family. Just,
Yeah.
I think that it's easier. And I think, yeah, two-parent families are definitely easier in that sense, as long as you have an agreement for a united front, um, with your kids. Flip side to it is, how do you do it?
I
Like,
think, I mean, a lot of it could be just, being there, right? Like my dad was really gone a lot of time. He traveled or he moved to another state while we sold a house. And I think that a lot of it is just, like you mentioned, about understanding your kids, knowing who they are, and setting realistic expectations.
yes. Yeah. That's the other thing. I don't think a lot of parents set expectations for their kids. I think they go, oh, well, the school will do that. Because everything's being mandated everywhere. I mean, like, yeah, that I have a problem with too, because I think we're all reasonable humans and we should all want our children to be reasonable people as well.
Yep.
I think the government needs to butt out a little bit.
They
And
do. I mean, again, to build that, I mean, I just think it's ridiculous. Like, in even teaching diversity and inclusivity, like, which is in Florida, that's ridiculous. I think even teaching, like, now they're pulling away about teaching kids, like, about African Americans and the history. I'm sorry, but that's history. And I think that they should know about it. But again, I don't have a kid, but I would never have an issue with um, my kid learning about history.
no, and I mean, as long as it's an honest recollection. I mean, white people did very bad things. Period. White people have been assholes because there was more white people to be assholes. Like, I mean, had the shoe been on the other foot, I mean, maybe it would be different. Maybe if there was more black people or more Native American people, maybe if they had the better weapons, I mean, things would have been different. But white people are jerks. Sorry.
I completely agree with you.
I
Completely.
don't I don't think that learning that in history, like, oh gosh, like they've taken Aunt Jemima off the maple syrup because it could be disrespectful. Now, here's the thing. If you go and you look at this, okay, because people are like, oh, well, you've got a black woman on the front of your pancake mix that's really prejudiced or whatever. I'm like, dude, that woman, that family was more proud of that. She was the highest paid black woman. She made herself so successful. I mean, I think that's empowering. It's not prejudice. That's like,
Oh, I hear you. And again, it's like it goes back to, I mean, I don't think we should remove the history. The history is what it is.
yeah,
But yeah, and I think parents should have that choice if they want to let their kids learn about it or not. Back when I was in school though, I didn't really have much choice. It was like this is what we're going to be taught and this is the way it's going to be.
yeah, yeah.
But yeah, and I think also, sorry, that was my ringtone. I'm not playing music in the background. I think also like, even like with bullying though, like teaching kids like what is right and what is wrong. And if going also into that whole thing, like why do kids think that that's okay? You
Yeah.
know what I mean? And again, that goes back to home.
Well, and so again, here comes there needs to be repercussions for their actions. I mean, and because in life, and this is what I always tell my kids, and the schools loved me because there always was. If my child was the bully, it's like, okay, they've called, hey, Mrs. Desjardins, so and so. My son, Cameron, when he was in grade 1, there was this kid that picked on him incessantly. And Cameron was very soft spoken and he's quite shy, but he was apparently fun to pick on. And Cameron would come home, he was very upset. Like physically, he would just be beside himself. And I finally said, okay, so you walked away. I said, you've talked to a teacher. I said, because these are the strategies I would teach him. Like, okay, walk away, go away from him. He's like, well, he follows me, mom, and then he hits me. Or, I said, and you've gone to a teacher. Yes. And then what happens? Well, she'll tell him not to do it. But then as soon as she's not looking, he hits me anyway. I'm like, okay. And you've tried everything else and you've asked him to please stop. He's like, yeah. I said, next time he hurts you. And I said, you only do this once, one time. I said, but next time he hurts you, you are allowed to punch him back in the gut, not in the face. I said, but you can punch him as hard as you can in the gut. And then when you get trouble, because you will, you tell them to call me. And you tell them that I said that was what you needed to do. So I got this phone call. Oh, Mrs. Desjardins, your son, hit Teddy and, like punched him in the gut really hard. I'm like, yeah. He goes, and he says that you told him to do this. I said, I did. I said, he has come and he has told you that he is being bullied. I said, have you called his mother? Yeah, his mother doesn't do anything. I said, okay. So I can't go and discipline this child. Clearly, you can't go and discipline this child. So I have told Cameron to do it once and one time only. And let's see if now it stops. It stopped because there was a repercussion. This kid was
Yeah.
now afraid to hurt Cameron because Cameron might punch him. Cameron would never have done it again because that was very traumatic for him. But he did it and he was never bullied again. Fine. But there was a repercussion. Even if I couldn't provide it, the school couldn't provide it. I mean, these kids walk around and there's no repercussions because it's hands off. You don't hit other kids. No, you shouldn't.
My sister has, like, my nephew was being bullied and he got cornered in a bathroom and he pushed back and fought back. And I mean, he ended up getting in trouble, but not that much trouble because they had proof. They saw videos of this other kid bullying him, like knocking his food tray out and doing this and that. And I will say, I'm not into violence at all, but yeah, if somebody's going to be pushing you and bullying you, but the thing is like if it was reported, the parents should have put an end to it.
Well,
But
and that's the thing. There are parents out there that don't want to be the mean parent, don't want to provide discipline. I mean, and sometimes you feel like you just don't have a choice because you're not allowed to spank your child. You're not allowed to do this or this or this. Otherwise, children's aid's going to show up. And see, this is where I think the government needs to go, okay, if it's blatant abuse, then no, you take that child. If that child is hungry, if that child is being beaten, but a flat hand on the butt, if it needs to be done, needs to be done. And the government has no, it should not be there involved in that. I don't know that a spanking would have been. I really don't believe that solving violence with violence on the parents' part is. I don't believe that that's a useful strategy.
yep.
But I mean, if you know that child, and I mean he's that persistent and he's very difficult, you take his video games away. You need to know that child. What is important to him? What does he value? And then be able to go, okay, so I've gotten a call from the school. He's a bully. I am going to, you know, adjust accordingly. I'm going to take something that he values. We're going to have conversation. I'm going to give him, tell him, there's repercussions for your actions as there are as an adult. If you get caught speeding, if you get caught drinking and driving, if you get caught doing something that you are not supposed to do, there are repercussions for your actions. I don't know how making this whole bumper world where kids never get in trouble and they're allowed to have, you're not preparing them for life.
No, you're not. I agree.
Like, yes, I believe your opportunity as children, when they're children, to have that conversation, like there are repercussions. And now, so here are the expectations. If you can't be within the expectations, expect that there will be repercussions that will get bigger the more we have to talk about that issue.
Yep. No, I hear what you're saying exactly. And yeah, it's
So,
knowing your children, but also, where can, because I always say there is no perfection in parenting.
no, there's not.
Um,
No.
it's being, I guess, I don't, yeah,
You
everything
can
you're
do your very best and it can still go haywire. I mean, you know, you, mental health is a really good example of that. So, as good as as good as your parenting might be, if your child has a severe mental health issue, it won't really matter. I mean, um, my oldest suffers from mental health issues. He's got bipolar, depression, borderline personality disorder, impulse control issues, all of these things. He has gone to facilities, he's been hospitalized. We've done all of this stuff. There is nothing more that can be done. And his life is difficult. And it's not because all of the things weren't done. Now the medical the mental health community has nothing to offer. They don't want to offer. So he just suffers. So, but it has nothing to do with parenting at that point. It has everything to do with, he's legitimately suffering from mental health issues. You can't, a child who's depressed or anxious, those are real mental health issues, but you can't blame those things. I mean, if they're being bullied, you still have to deal with the bullying, or
yep.
if they are bullies, you still have to deal with the bullying. And, you have to be considerate of their mental health, make sure that's being taken care of as well. But you have to deal with the bullies. And if your child, kids with depression, anxiety, mental health issues, they can be bullies. But people go, oh, but I have to handle them with kid gloves. So now there's no repercussions for their actions. Happens all the time. And then we
No,
wonder
I hear
why things are so messed up. But anyway, we are over time. So anything else you want to add?
No, I mean, I agree with, I mean, a lot of what you're saying. And I just think, it is, like you said earlier, it's like, it is taxing to raise a kid. And there's nothing no right or wrong way. I mean, there is a wrong way. You could beat your, starve your kid and obviously kill them, but, not laughing, but
The
that happens
goal is to
here.
keep them alive.
But I do think that, like if a kid is bullying, that you need to one find out why. Like, and is it peer pressure? Is it something going on with them? Because maybe you're raising a psychopath. I don't know.
Mhm.
But I think, I don't have kids. I just know that there are kids that I feel like more the kids that are being disciplined more and being grounded, and if they're doing something wrong, end up being a better child in the long run.
A better human. Oh, well, one of the principals to um my kids' school when they were young, she's like, she goes, I don't, she goes, you're the only parent that shows up and makes sure that there's something that carries over. So if the school's trying to do something, or I'm trying, there was carryover. She goes, you're the only, I said, oh, I said, there's good reason for that. She goes, what? I said, I'm not raising children. She's like, what do you mean? I said, oh, I'm not raising children. I said, if you raise children, you're going to have adult children. I said, I'm raising adults. I expect them to behave like adults. They're going to make mistakes, and that's fine. But at their level, I mean, I'm going to treat them like they get to make choices and they live with the repercussions of their decisions. She's like, that is the best thing I've ever heard. She's
She's
like,
right.
because you raise children, you're going to have children. I don't want adult children. Like, I want them to be adults, but just not childlike anymore.
Yeah, no, I hear what you're saying.
Yeah.
Exactly.
So, anyway, if you have enjoyed the podcast, then like and subscribe. Hey, you can even share it. That'd be awesome. And we will get with you again soon.
Thank you, everybody.
Bye, guys.